Again, Ether World, which despite being a dating sim was really popular with male players, because it allowed them to roleplay as many characters, some difficult ones and some efficient ones. Though there was a character who was terrible for his difficulty and features, named Bayek Uziel. Though there was someone who still mained him, who is our MC. One of the evening, he sees some new posts on forum, wondering if there is an update. It's about a final boss but in a dating sim, which surprises Uziel. And he notices one of the posts is by a famous player who complains about the final boss being not beatable. Noting that it doesn't make sense for a magic nullifying boss to be in a magical world, and the player characters are also getting deleted. As the boss appears, who is a dark demon dragon. There is also an organization called Dark Demonic Humans, and their objective is to help an otherworld called Persona Gate to take over this world. And when they managed to do that, the Dark Demon Dragon appeared. As 90% of the continent is already taken over by them, our MC is only concerned with the PvP and not story, but since he cannot avoid it, he decides to try to fight it. And as such he gets in and decides to show off his skills that he honed for the past 10 years. As he stands in front of the dragon, who completely towers him. His character, Bayek Uziel, is a side character and cannot use magic, despite everyone else able to do so. As such, not even experienced player plays him, making him worse than an extra character. But he can use some magic, only one that is. As against the incoming dragon attack, he starts to smirk. And uses his one and only spell he can use, Blink. His Blink spell allows him to travel between 3 to 10 meters very quickly. But the direction is random and if the distance is not controlled, he dies immediately due to speed and impact. And the cool time and mana usage is insane, not to mention a penalty that you cannot move for 2 seconds after using it, and such even when some players learn it, they never use this skill. But Uziel has mastered it, able to control his direction and the distance, and also managed to nullify the penalty. And it doesn't use mana, since he doesn't have a mana stat, and our boy became obsessed with this character due to it being so skill dependent. And as such he plays a character no one uses, and slashes the dragon with his skill and sword. And ending up defeating the final boss. He gets surprised himself as well that he won with a trash character, even if he is wearing top-level gear. But suddenly he gets bombarded with notifications about the world being destroyed since a bad ending has been reached. But since he was the closest to the true ending, the system tells him to reach the true ending, as he starts to get enveloped in a white light. And getting transported to another world. Lying on the floor, he starts to get up. Wondering, where is he? Though, he notices a mirror and goes to it. Surprised by his appearance, as it is that of his character, Bayek Uziel. And just then a notification appears in front of him. Which starts the episode 1, Escape the Chase. And our MC realizes that it is the Bayek Uziel's prologue quest. And remembering something, he reaches down in his pockets and pulls out a letter which is an entrance certificate to Stellar Academy. And with that he confirms that this is Ether World and out of all the characters, he had to be Bayek Uziel. He starts to calm down and thinks about the true ending, but this game doesn't have any true ending, only multiple endings. But suddenly he comes to a realization that perhaps no one has managed to reach the true ending in last 10 years. But he bites his lips in frustration, remembering something crucial. That right after Bayek wakes up, the people who are chasing after him burst into the hut. As he tries to hide from them behind the wall. But they are able to notice the hut itself. And orders his men to search the hut, while Bayek wonders his next move. Knowing he cannot keep avoiding them, but he is unable to fight either. Just as he in a dilemma, a notification appears. Informing him that he can use his skill, Blink. We learn that his body is affected by the mana leakage syndrome, due to which he is unable to accumulate mana, but he has one hope, the spell that he practiced his whole life. Back to the present, he is nervous, as before he was using it in a game, controlled with a mouse and keyboard. Outside the hut, his pursuers are running towards him at full speed. Hearing their footsteps, he realizes that they are already here. Knowing that there is no time left, now only thing he can do is try. His pursuers who are standing outside the hut catches Uziel trying to escape. They chase Uziel and as the first part of the tutorial he has to escape them using Blink. But his pursuers are faster than him due to wearing magic boots, hence the only way left is to use Blink, but Uziel is still hesitating in using it. But he calms himself down and tries to remember the muscle memory. His pursuers are also right behind him, almost reaching him. The main disadvantage of blink is, if the user fails to control it, they could collide with an object and die instantly, as the pursuer draws his sword and attacks Uziel. But for Uziel, when he uses blink, it's different. And with that he is instantly able to dodge his strike, and finally gets excited upon successfully executing it. His pursuers get shocked upon seeing him use blink, but their leader tells them to not falter, since he will be paralyzed after using it. But upon seeing him still running, he gets shocked. Uziel arrives at an uneven terrain and thinks to use it to his advantage. As if players doesn't learn how to use flash at this stage, they wouldn't be able to make to the next episode. But in reality, 99% of the players failed the tutorial for Beck Uziel, and even the 1% couldn't pass the blink distance controlling and continuous blinking. Once again, seeing him use blink in such manner shocks his pursuers as he orders the mages on his team to attack him from a distance. The mages come forward and the mana start swirling around them. Looking behind his back, Uziel realizes that they're going to use magic, because the second part of the tutorial is to dodge the magic arrows using blink. Though in-game it was easier since you could see it on the monitor. Suddenly another notification comes, informing him that his magic leakage syndrome has derivative skills, sixth sense and cognitive acceleration which are now active. Uziel's eyes widen as he senses the surrounding around him, and is able to dodge the arrows quite easily. As the last arrow is right behind his back, he immediately uses blink and dodges. Noting it was quite close this time, and he begins to arrive at the last location, which is the part 3 of the tutorial, to cross a canyon using blink. And the only way to do so if he can perfectly control the distance of his blink. After which he can meet up with some passing mages and escape, ending the tutorial. But to even pass, he has to control his blink precisely and cancel it, which occurs in 0.1 seconds, and failing means death. Though noting that this thing is still doable, the real problem is something else, which are his pursuers. Realizing they are closer than expected, due to his blink being on a 3-second cooldown, and distance between them is 100 meters, he won't be able to make it. As such, he realizes the only way to survive would be to defeat all of them here. Fast forward, we see Uziel is hiding beside a rock. As once again, he starts to doubt if he can fight them, since he never been in a real fight before. He decides to break the system rules, since otherwise it's impossible to attack those who are chasing him, but it's possible right now since it's reality. And the thought of killing someone isn't bothering him at all, and it's not due to the fact those guys are his parents' enemies. It's simply due to our boy thinking that he can win against them. As his pursuers get near, he comes out of hiding, and their leader immediately orders them to attack him. As he is standing right in front of the charging soldier, the soldier smirks, thinking of him as some idiot for doing so. But just as the soldier gets under 10-meter distance, Uziel uses blink, immediately striking and ending the guy charging at him. As he slices his throat, he doesn't feel any guilt because according to him, he is only doing it to survive. As the soldier is falling down, Uziel pushes his body onto the other soldiers. As they get burdened by his body, Uziel immediately makes a run for it. They again start chasing him, and Uziel notes that next time it's not going to be easy, as he ponders his next move. Suddenly he notices there isn't any sound coming from behind him, as if they stopped chasing. But it's not that, instead they flank him. As they again begin to prepare to use magic, Uziel tries to dodge, but his feet slips due to the snow. As the mage fire magic starts heading towards Uziel, the spell covers a wide area, making it even harder to dodge for him. But he notices a branch up ahead, and uses blink to try and reach it. As the spell hits its mark, causing an explosion and producing a large amount of smoke, making his pursuers think that it did the job. But as the smoke clears, they realize that he is not here, wondering where he went, while Uziel attacks him from right above. As the guy looks above, but he is too late. As Uziel drops down while completely slashing his body with blink, since the spell maintains the same momentum both before and after using. As the other pursuers wonders what just even happened. But before they even grasp the situation, Uziel takes down another one of them. As their leader is completely shocked upon seeing all this, while Uziel notes that it's finally down to only 2 of them, and that he needs to end them before the 2 more behind them can catch up. His pursuer notes that he has an uncanny reaction speed for a mage. As they start to wonder, just what on earth is he? As Uziel reaction speed is indeed faster than even most professional gamers, he realizes he won't be able to dodge the attacks forever. As such, he rushes towards them to end it as quickly as possible. Though his pursuer thinks he has figured him out, noting that he only uses blink and dagger. So he focuses on protecting his face and neck, as then he wouldn't be able to even scratch him. And uses Ice Wave, and with a large war cry, calling Uziel to come at him. Uziel once again uses blink. As with his Ice Wave attack, the guy starts to think that he finally caught Uziel. But he couldn't be more wrong, as Uziel instead goes for the other guy with him. As he notes in shock that he was fighting like a coward earlier, but now it's different. To which Uziel replies back that it's all thanks to him. Which pisses the guy off. Now Uziel rushes towards him with a spear in one hand, which he throws right at him. The guy tries to wonder if he is luring him into defending his front and then attacking him from side, since using blink for head-on attacks is dangerous. As such, he breaks the spear and follows up with an attack right on the side. But suddenly he realizes, after hitting nothing, that Uziel was planning to attack him right on the front from the start. Fast forward, the episode 1 is finally over, for which he receives XP and additional rewards for developing the story in a unique way by the Constellation Project. We see him huffing and all tired after fighting so many of his pursuers. As he looks over to the body of his pursuers, he is again faced with the reality that it isn't a dream. With a grim expression on his face, he thinks back that this was his first battle, first blink, and the first time he ended a person. And now he gets up to leave the place again. Though looking at the body, he thinks of something. He goes on to loot it, thinking that he have to do this to survive even if it leaves a bad taste, and he finds 2 million credit, which according to him is better than nothing. Now he moves on to another problem, which is to cross the cliff. Suddenly he hears someone shouting, asking if there is anyone. Uziel realizes that it's the group who appears in the tutorial, and he shouts back. The group asks him if he can cross, to which Uziel replies, he is on his way. The group decides to wait for him, though one of them doubts if he could accomplish that, since you need to be at least a third-class knight to do that. But suddenly he notices him using blink spell. Uziel continues on with using blink to cross the cliff. And looking at him in confusion, they wonder if it's some jumping magic. Though a blue-haired girl behind them tells them that it's blink. They are surprised to know that, since you cannot control that spell, yet he is using it flawlessly. But suddenly they also notice something else. 2 people standing behind Uziel, wondering if they are with him. But they realize it's not the case, as they starts to charge up a spell. And suddenly fires it towards Uziel behind his back. Uziel notices and uses blink to dodge. Getting high up and observing the 2 remaining pursuers. Wondering if they were mercenaries before, and noting dodging magic would be impossible with blink with its 3-second cooldown. As he starts to look around to find another foothold. But he once again notices one of them charging up another magic spell. As the spell is blasted towards him, he is barely able to dodge it this time. And with losing his foothold, he starts to fall. He quickly tries to find another floating stone to use as foothold, but they are all too far from him. But he still uses blink, hoping to land on just one somehow. And he successfully is able to grab the ledge of one of them. But his worries are far from over, as just when he's hanging, another fire spell comes towards him. This time thinking that he is really going to die. But suddenly another spell is blasted towards the incoming fire spell. The spell completely nullifies the pursuer's magic, leaving only some floating ice shards behind in his path. As Uziel notes in shock, that it was an ice spear covered in lightning, knowing someone capable of 2 elements in one magic in tutorial baffles him. And not only that, whoever used it was able to precisely calculate the trajectory without wasting any mana. As he starts to wonder just who could perform such feat. Even his pursuers are in shock and they run away all scared. As he climbs back up and crosses the canyon, finally meeting up with the group. Noting it was the girl who helped him, he goes on to thank her. Though she replies, she hasn't done anything to deserve his gratitude. Hearing her makes Uziel thinks that she got the prettiest voice he has heard, although she seems difficult to approach. Now he thinks back about his pursuers. Noting that even though they are known as bandits, in reality most of these activities are carried out by Dark Demon Cult. But even that would end here, since when he enters the territory of mages, they won't be able to pursue him anymore, not to mention they don't even know his identity. Suddenly another notification appears, informing him about start of Chapter 2, enrolling in the Stellar Academy, to which he thinks is not going to be too hard. Though noting the word academy, he gets annoyed, thinking how would he go through school at this age again. Fast forward at night, Uziel is traveling with the group in a caravan. He starts to dream of Uziel's memories about him wanting to become a mage. His parents did their best to get him a magic book, which he studied really hard to make them happy. But unfortunately, his dream came to an end when he was diagnosed with mana leakage syndrome. With frustration on his face, he starts to cry at the realization that he would not be able to become a mage. Suddenly Uziel wakes up, with a slight headache. As he looks outside, noting that it's morning already, the guy with him informs that they're going to be arriving in Lazoicha, the satellite city of Arcanium. The caravan stops, as everyone gets out to take a break. Though as Uziel is stretching, he notices the blue-haired girl staring at him. But when he looks back at her, she simply leaves. Uziel notes that things are fine the way they are right now, and it's good that the timeline is closer to modern times rather than Middle Ages. Even though magic exists in this world, there are also trains, flying ships and warp holes as well in certain cities. And they will be taking a flying ship to Lazoicha as well, which lies on the route to Arcanium, the city of magic, where the real episode begins. And the academy, with the most powerful mages as well as most excelling students, Stellar Academy. As such, that academy is full of geniuses and nobles from all over the world, as our boy wonders how did he even manage to get admission into such a place. He then begins to check out his skills, noting that if it weren't for these two skills, he would have been dead. We get to know that he has a cursed physique which stops mana from accumulating within the body, which is an inherent curse that our MC has. But it also allowed him to sense mana around him with sixth sense, and also allowing him to dodge incoming attacks without looking, and it enhances his reaction as well, to the point that he senses things as if time had been slowed down. It's something necessary for him, since he cannot use mana, though it does uses a lot of mind power. As for his stats, he notes they are not bad for just starting out. But he notes that Beck Uziel originally had low sensitivity, but it took part of the stats of the character he fostered Beck Uziel into. He further explains that there are level to stats as well, skills are in forms of level and the stats in stars. The maximum amount, 9 stars, is essentially impossible to reach. Even when he played for 10 years, he only reached 8 stars. But for now he upgrades his sixth sense and reaction speed, since other stats can be raised through other methods. Now only problem left is his disease. He notes that he needs to upgrade it to Secrets of Nature Physique as soon as possible. And the way to reinforce it is within Stellar Academy, due to which he has no choice but to go, if he wants to stop the end of the world and treat his syndrome. Suddenly he sees some missed notifications. Though just as he is about to check, he gets called out, deciding to check it later as the blue-haired girl stares at him. Fast forward, we see a huge flying ship, and a lot of students inside, and an announcement that they will be leaving for Arcanium. One of them notices Uziel, mocking him for his clothes and looks, calling him a country bumpkin and wondering why does Stella let peasants in as well, and berating him that he is sullying the academy with his lowly origin. Though Uziel just ignores him, which pisses him off. As Uziel leaves, thinking, kids will be sane wherever you are. As he tries to shout at him to stop, everyone behind him is in shock due to something else. He looks back as well, wondering what happened, and gets shocked as well. And we see, it's the entrance of Princess Bion, who is the princess of the Adolabit Kingdom, Hong Bion Adolabit. As she walks by, the purple-haired guy tries to greet her, but he only gets a cold stare from her. As she leaves, completely ignoring him. While she walks by, Uziel he start to stare at her, noting that she is this world's villainess. She is one of the main characters in this game. She and the female protagonist are always in argument, and she dies in the end. And no matter what ending you pick, she gets brutally murdered in some, while she gets bullied by the entire academy before getting expelled in others. And in one, she goes through something so shameful that she never appears in front of the public again, as if the developers had some personal resentment towards her and wanted her to suffer no matter what. Though she is really popular among the male players, as Uziel also acknowledges that she is indeed very pretty, as suddenly his stomach starts to growl as he goes on to find something to eat. As he checks out the food, he is hit with their prices, which surprises him. He goes back, thinking that he will just eat when they arrive at Arcanium. Though suddenly an announcement is being made, that they will be arriving in Arcanium in 10 minutes. And to make sure to make their way to first floor. As Uziel smiles, noting that it's finally starting, as he gets all ready to start with his new reality. Now fast forward, we see Uziel is doubting himself, if he could really survive in this world. He wonders if there is anything that could help him, but suddenly remembers about the missed notifications. He quickly opens up the window, and he gets a special reward, which are either a downgraded version of his items, or downgraded version of his skills that he got in-game. He searches for one of the skill, but the system tells him that item's grade is too high and will be severely downgraded. He searches for even more stuff, but everything turns out to be too high level, though it does gives him an option to slightly upgrade his blink spell using the reward. And due to lack of his narrative power, the system also cannot be materialized fully, as Uziel wonders what is that, and it turns out to be the force which drives the progress of the story, and if he explore unknown branches like he did before, it will accumulate. Uziel mocks the system for unable to provide him with anything, and he does his last search about the bulbul glasses. The system finally agrees and provides him with that. The bulbul glasses is an item that contains all the information he collected when he played the game. Since in that game it was impossible to read and recall information, so players developed other ways to store information. As he wears the glasses, their information windows show up. He opens the bulbul folder and finds the information he collected is still there. And since he is now in real life, grinding like in-game couldn't be possible, but with the glasses, he claims to have already regained half of his ability he used to have. Suddenly he hears people around him notice a student, Azel, whom they call the traitor Dutch Molf's eldest daughter. They comment and mocks her for showing up in the academy after her father's betrayal. And Uziel remembers that his glasses also allows him to register or check the character information within the story. And it shows as fake heroine. To begin explaining about her, we get to know one thing. The game Ether World is actually based on a romance fantasy novel, Don't Love the Princess, of which the heroine is supposed to be Azel, who have lost her entire family. She grows by confronting the schemes of villainous Hong Bion, and ends up with the male protagonist. Though in the end, her revenge disappears and the MC protects her, it had a sad ending after receiving harsh feedback. Although the game is based on the novel, the story is different, as they added an original character named Flame, who took over the role of heroine, not to mention she had a backstory as well. She was someone who lived in the modern world and used to enjoy reading Don't Love the Princess, and was transported to this world. So unlike Azel, Flame became the real heroine, and despite players' best effort, Azel doesn't survive in any endings, pushing her out from the real heroine position. Though our boy declares he doesn't have anything to do with it. But as he looks at her, he wonders if he has seen her before, but dismisses the thought as his imagination. Now fast forward and we arrive at the Stellar Academy. And with the one of the professor starts giving out speech, with students mocking, commenting that it's quite boring and tedious. Now the teacher calls out the students who were admitted with the highest scores and as well as the freshman representatives. And with that we get a glimpse upon some of the important characters in the story. As Uziel watches them, noting their faces are shining like the main characters they are. But even amongst them, one stands out, the freshman representative, Ma Yuziong, who entered with the highest score. Uziel explains that he is a character who best fits the phrase, throughout the heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one. His mana status is 9 stars, potential close to the realm of deities, a natural genius among geniuses who can control all the elements in this world. Noting that even if he cannot reach true ending, he has to bring Ma Yuziong to the good side to avoid any bad ones. But realizes that it would be up to Flame to do that. Though it would depend on how she acts, Uziel thinks to befriend her, since she is also from the same reality as him. But he notes it can get complicated if she thinks of him as an enemy, though he would still have the upper hand due to having more information. But apparently, Uziel's importance in the story cannot even be compared to that of a shop NPC in a village. And Flame also possess a special ability to cleanse the dark demonic humans, and even one ability to impoverish those around her. Noting that being around her is going to affect him, he decides to support them from afar. And as the entrance ceremony in episode 2 ends, Uziel states that he will try his best to not get involved with them as much as possible. Fast forward we see him sitting in a classroom. And he starts to feel weird, since he has already graduated once. But he takes a look at a pocket watch, and states that having this feels good. It's actually known as Stellar Pocket Watch, having which proves you're a student at the most prestigious magic academy, and with this you can receive much better treatment and service even against most magic warrior with licenses. About which Uziel gets excited to use. Now the professor comes in, telling everyone to get seated, announcing the beginning of her exam, and for those who use glasses, have to get it examined first. And with this academy's curriculum being more difficult than most Korean universities, you have to take exam even on first day. And this exam is used as class placement exam, as the professor shouts to begin. Looking at the questions, Uziel is stuck, since he doesn't know anything. This exam is unrelated to the entrance exam, which is known for being extremely difficult. Students are assigned to the class F to A and S class based on this exam results. Though most playable characters ends up in S class. And Baek Uziel entered the academy with last place among 1141 students, and can be automatically considered as an F class, as he wonders if he would get expelled for turning in a blank sheet. Suddenly he notices Ma Yuzeong, who is sitting all casually and looking at his exam paper, which he has already finished. Noting, for someone like him living itself is boring. As the nature of his character is boredom, as he was born in the strongest family in the world, and has the most genius brain and talent, everything ends up being too easy for him. Hence, depending on how female lead acts, he could turn out either good or evil. And the dark demonic humans would obviously be very interested in him. Though for him, his biggest issue is his family. As suddenly he gets a thought of using bulbul glasses on the exam. Though he is still in doubt if it would work, but he decides to try it anyways, and starts to pull it out. But just then the professor notes, asking him about the glasses. Telling him that he just told them to get them examined first, which apparently Uziel forgot, but he takes them anyways to examine them. He examines them thoroughly, while Uziel is scared of getting expelled if he gets caught. Suddenly his system acts up, asking him if he wants to call a missing part of bulbul glasses which have been found, freaking Uziel out, as he tells the system to stay quiet. The professor is unable to find anything and tells Uziel to ask first from next time, while our boy notes that he would have been in trouble if the glasses still had its original functions. After wearing the glasses, he is able to see all the answers. He quickly starts to write his paper in excitement of getting first place. But his dream is shattered as the professor ends the exam, telling them to hand over the papers. As all the papers automatically flies out to him, though our boy has only completed 3 questions. Seeing the paper, the professor gets shocked, while Uziel is disappointed on being unable to escape the F class. Suddenly the professor shouts at him, telling him to hand over the glasses to him right now. He once again doesn't find anything, and calls out Dr. Gryan. As Uziel wonders if he got caught, even though he did write his answering process clearly as to not be mistaken as cheating. Now the magic engineering professor starts to examine the glasses as well. He states that it is suspicious that he solved those questions. The professor jumps to conclusion of cheating, but Professor Gryan claims he did not cheat, since he cannot feel magic tool energy from these glasses, and that he definitely solved it with his own ability. Professor Gryan calls it very interesting, and tells Professor Hanwol to apologize to the student. As such he does apologize for the misunderstanding, and Uziel forgives him, while knowing that he did in fact cheat, and it would have been bad if it had its original functions. Now in the teacher's faculty, we see Professor Hanwol checking the papers. As he is staring at one of them, and in some thoughts. Suddenly another professor comes, and asks him if there are this year's papers. She is introduced as Council of Elders, Professor Edeltamen, as she notes that there sure are many interesting freshmen this year. Which Hanwol agrees with. From the most renowned family in fire class magic, Hong Bion, the princess of Adolabit, the Kingdom of Flames. The chosen successor of the position of Crown Prince of the Scalvan Empire at the age of 12 purely because of his magical prowess, Jeremy Scalvan, who completely surpassed his older brothers in the race for the crown. And from the world's greatest magic tower, the Full Moon Tower, the successor of the Magic Tower Master, Ha Wonriang. Edeltamen notes that it must have been difficult to set the exam questions for such prominent students, as it did had many interesting questions, to which Hanwol agrees with. Hanwol notes that this year there was a new type of question. The first 3 were questions that would be hard to answer for students who studies normally. There were some intent behind them, a flexibility test. If it's something you cannot solve, can you skip it and move on? How would you solve something that didn't appear in any textbook you read? Currently the age of combat demands quick judgment and creative thinking. But those questions didn't meant to be solved. In fact, over 1,000 students left them blank, and the other 100 who attempted it couldn't get a single one correct. Though only 3 of them got it right. Ma Yuzeong, genius of the century, as he appeared like a comet with unknown origins, and Flame, who got admission on principal's recommendation despite being a commoner, a talent close to Ma Yuzeong. And then there is Baek Uziel. They both are considered genius, while Uziel had the lowest admission score. As such Hanwol didn't expect it for him to answer, especially when he left everything else. Both the professor are in quite the surprise that Uziel was able to solve the problem, as it doesn't make sense, since even countless formulas and equations couldn't solve them. They wonder if he is a genius, though Edeltamen considers it a coincidence. On his paper there is also a note that principal gave him special admission for able to control the blink spell. Looking at the note he smiles, saying a mage combat student who specializes in blink, he will find out soon enough whether it's a coincidence or if he is truly special. Many students chatter about the class assignment being put on the board, though Uziel is slightly embarrassed in checking the board in person. One of the student notices Beck Uziel. Everyone around him mocks him for getting the lowest score in admission test and disregarding Stella's decision to accept him, though he just ignores them and moves on to check his class. But he is unable to find his name in them. He wonders if he got failed since he only solved 3 questions. Suddenly he overhears voices of surprise about him. Students comment about that even prominent students got an A class and is doubtful and jealous of Uziel's class placement. Uziel is confused as well and decides to check it out. He is shocked upon looking at the board. We see his name is written under S class, which completely shocks him, as he wonders what is even going on. As it's a class most students only dream of getting, a place where only the best students gather, unlike other grades with multiple classes. Class S has only 41 students and only 1 class. He thinks his assignment is a mistake and now he would be running into main characters often. Knowing that getting involved with them will shorten his already short life, and such he decides to keep a low profile, as he thinks he will be able to manage it somehow. But we see Flame behind him, noting something. We switch scenes to Beyond, who is getting slapped by someone. The lady is also a professor, a Fire Element 1, Hong Yil, who berates Beyond for getting those 3 questions wrong. She compares her with Azel, as even she got some of them correct despite being an insect and hence calls Beyond even lower than insect. She orders Beyond to do it again, to which she agrees with. Yil tells her to not become someone like her, who was chased out of the kingdom and had to become a professor, telling her to not become ashamed of the kingdom. She grabs her face, telling her to become better than her sister, while she smiles with an evil grin on her face, asking her if she does understand her. Beyond replies she does, though in reality she doesn't, as she starts to cry since she only lives the way she is told to and hence is unable to solve problems she haven't learned. While in tears, she expresses her grief of being tormented. Back to Uziel, who is still troubled by the fact that he got assigned to class full of social weirdos. As students around him comment in shock how is he here, as even their parents protested against it, though the teacher shut them all down, which the students find ridiculous. As it all makes Uziel feels like an outcast. Though he gets past all of it, relating to their frustration since they've been studying here since they were young, unlike him, while noting the class can change according to one's performance, though it's rare to be demoted. He does remember about one student who will rise up to Class S in the future as well. And looking around in class, he finds it quite amazing, since all of them were characters in the game he used to play. While knowing that most of them will become world known, and some will even betray the magic world. And Ma Yuxiong being one of them. While noting it would be good if Flame could stop him. Now Professor Hanwol enters, telling everyone to get seated, as he introduces himself to everyone formally, as he is going to be the professor of S class, Li Hanwol. As the students comment about his popularity, and the ridiculous amount of demonic humans that he hunted, as he is also known as the 7th class magic warrior. Professor Hanwol starts to notice Uziel as he comments on how there are a lot of talented students and a unique one among them as well. He lectures about the academy being a place to foster magic warriors, and even though not everyone will be able to keep with its rigorous education over 3 years, he does hope that they will show him their best efforts. He asks the class if there are any questions, which there are none. Hence he starts the class, though we see Beyond in the background. We see her just standing on the gate all silently and arriving late. Uziel is surprised to see her being late out of all the student, as he wonders if something happened with her. He decides to use bulbul glasses to check on her info. In her status window, he notices that she is guaranteed to die, as he remembers that Azel dies because of Flame, while Beyond dies because both Azel and Flame. Noting that it's basically inevitable that she will become a villainess. Uziel feels that he would like to save her if he could, though he is not in a position where he could. He does feel bad, but he will be keeping his distance. But just then, Beyond walks right up to his desk, surprising him, as she looks over to him with a cold glare, which makes Uziel a bit nervous. But she just silently sits right beside him. As Uziel starts to feel incredibly nervous, due to things already getting twisted right from the start. Now Professor Hanwol announces the staff succession for the staffs they will be using, and both A and S class will have it together. Uziel smiles, knowing that it's annoying, but he looks forward to it. In Stellar Academy, there are two big events. One of them is Familiar Contract Ceremony, and the other one is Staff Succession Ceremony, which is quite special just like Stellar Academy itself. Now all the students and Professor Hanwell arrives at some magical place. As he informs them that there are lowest class to middle high class rank staff here, all they have to do is just grab the staff that they like. And telling them to choose carefully since changing it later is complicated, though Uziel notes that it's actually the staff that will be choosing us, as they only respond to the person they deem worthy of commanding them, creating a resonance effect. Which means you cannot just use high-level staffs just because you want to. As Uziel looks around, wondering which one should he choose, knowing that he have to choose carefully, since he is in S-class now, though the staff that best fits him is the wand. Staves are divided into two classes, the short form, wand, and the long form, staff. Wand is wielded by spell knight, who spam magic quickly, and staves are used by bishops, who focus on single hit with longer casting time. Once again students comments and wonders what is Uziel going to pick, mocking him that it should be easy for him to cause a resonance effect. But he simply ignores them once again. Suddenly someone calls him out from behind. The guy introduces himself as Uslek, though Uziel is not interested. Uslek asks about his choice of staff, to which Uziel replies that anything will do, and Uslek mocks him that he should pick a staff which fits his commoner status, and to not make trouble for anyone, and Uziel simply leaves by saying that he shouldn't as well, which pisses Uslek off, as he shouts at him. Uziel calls him annoying and uses his bulbul glasses to check his information. Seeing all of it, he starts to pity him for being too much of an extra. Uslek points at a staff to show off that he is going to pick that one. Seeing that staff surprises Uziel, as it's the Edmaria Tamiri, noting that it's the highest class staff here, a middle high class one, which is something used by pro magic warriors. As for the students, having a middle low class is the limit, no matter how talented you are. And even the professional magic warriors are barely able to get a middle low class staff. Though we get to know that there is another middle high class staff as well, but it's not for picking, but just for show. Professor Hanwell tells everyone to go stand in front of the staff which they like. We see both Jeremy and Wan Riang picks there, and as Beyond takes a hold of her staff, we see it emitting an incredibly blinding light. As everyone is shocked seeing Wan Riang, Jeremy and Beyond able to pick and middle-class staffs, noting that this year is crazy. It annoys Uslek as well, as he goes on to pick his as well. Everyone notes that he is trying to resonate with the middle high-class staff. He smirks in confidence while grabbing it, being all sure of his victory. And just as he grabs it, the staff retaliates. Though Uziel is not surprised at all by his failure. All the students note that he has gotten hurt badly, noting that picking that staff is going to be impossible. As Uziel states that they all need to give up anyways. And we see Ma Yuziong is walking towards it. As Uziel continues, since the owner of that staff has already been decided. Everyone is surprised to see him there, as they doubt him, that even he could handle that staff. But when he grabs the staff, a bright light starts to shine. As he smirks, while he is able to hold the staff successfully. All the students are surprised from it, except for Uziel, who already knew. And now a lot more people will realize how talented he is. As suddenly Ma Yuziong notices Uziel, and for some reason, smiles in his direction, which confuses and shocks Uziel. And now Uziel remembers that Flame is going to own another high mid-class staff, Terivon. But he notes that this is also where the route could split, as if she does manages to grab Terivon. Yuziong will take interest in her because of her ability, starting the Yuziong route. But if she picks another staff, it would open a completely different route, as such he decides to use Flame to bring Yuziong to their side. And he finds Flame, walking towards the Terivon. He watches her carefully, wondering what is she going to do. As she gets close to it, Uziel wishes to have her grab the Terivon, which will result in Ma Yuziong taking interest in her. But she completely ignores it and walks past it, surprising Uziel. He is shocked by her non-interest in the Televon. He wonders if she doesn't know about it, perhaps a lack of information, realizing that it's bad, since she should be able to resonate with any staff as the female lead. He gets worried about her picking some strange staff, which could potentially mean losing out other good routes as well. Uziel starts to charge up with the intent to push the Terivon to her. He uses his blink spell and appears right behind Flame, as she turns around and freaks out after suddenly noticing him behind herself. He asks her choice of staff, to which she questions on why does he wants to know. he makes an excuse that it's because she looked lost, and Flame gives him a cold shoulder and hits him with, "It's none of your business," and leaves immediately, completely ignoring him, surprising Uziel. He notices that it's strange, since she is supposed to be friendly with everyone. But Uziel doesn't give up and calls out to her once more, telling her that he really wants to help her, to which she tells him to mind his own business. As he is trying to push her towards Terravon, she gets pissed, asking him, what does he know about staffs? Uziel wonders if he did something wrong, as he tries to incite her by saying that he heard a lot about her, so she should be capable of grabbing that one while pointing towards Terravon. She notices that staff as well, asking if he is asking about Terravon, to which he replies, yes he is. Suddenly he notices something and hears a noise, as if something is getting closer to him, and a bright light is shone, after which he opens his eyes to see what it was. Suddenly he is left speechless after seeing himself holding the Terravon. He freaks out, wondering why does he have it instead of Flame. He realizes that he messed up, while slowly turning his head towards Flame. And she is pissed, to the shock of Uziel, who wonders why is this happening. He shrinks back in fear, noting that he has messed up big time. Now in the evening, as Flame is walking back, she overhears the student talking about Ma Yuziong and Uziel, and how they become 2 out of 7 students in the history to grab the high mid-class staffs. And especially focus on Uziel, as he being a student who only used Blink during his admission test, which surprises them since their parents taught them that it's a useless magic. Overhearing all that, Flame starts to think about him as well. Now at the self-study hall, she finally gets some peace and quiet as she wanted. As everywhere she went, all they talked about was Uziel. Since the news that 2 students grabbed high mid-class staffs were spread instantaneously, thought she doesn't understand something. As she wonders just who is he, since the original novel she read, there was never a character named Beck Uziel. Wondering in frustration that it is said no one is able to grab it, let alone resonate with it, yet he did. As if he is trying to show off to her. But for now she decides to ignore it. As some of her friends suddenly calls her out asking if she was going for self-study. She turns back to them and smiles. She asks them if they think she is a nerd or something, to which they reply that it's just due to she is always studying, and why does she always call them kids despite being the same age. She passes it off as a habit, which she got since she was always treated as older, though the real reason is that she is in a novel from present time. A red-haired girl asks her if she is going to be alone today as well, as Flame notices her name to be Jackie, as she also notes that her style is similar to her, and Flame tells her that she is going to attend supplementary lessons, as she leaves soon after. While walking down, she thinks it's hard being a student at her age, as she suddenly bumps into someone at a corner. And it turns out to be Wan Riang. As he asks her if she is okay, he notices her expression and asks if something is bothering her. Flame wonders if he is worried about her, though she tells him that not anything particular. Next he asks if she is going for self-study then, to which she replies, indeed, and asks him back that if he is again going to the S-Class exclusive training hall. Wan Riang says he cannot be lazy when it comes to it, which makes Flame call him unnecessarily sincere, though Wan Riang notes it's something they both share. And while looking at her, he smiles, as he cleans up her shoulders and leaves saying to see her later. She also turns around, calling it bland. But Flame notices Jackie, who is staring at her, standing behind a corner. Wondering why is she here, she tries to call her out, but she leaves before that. Now she arrives and stands right outside the self-study hall. Noting that according to the original novel, both Byeon and Azel will be attending this meeting, and it's important to watch them both face off in a romance fantasy novel. As she enters the hall, noticing Azel, Uziel and Ma Yuziong, and knowing that all the important characters are here, she observes around and sees the host who is of a class, Kyle, and he is quite intimidated due to all the S-class students. As she sits down, she notices in surprise that even Ma Yuziong is here. And he is the male lead of this world and he is interested in Beck Uziel, which cannot be a coincidence. And she also knows that Uziel didn't solve any other questions than the 3 questions from hell, which leads her to assume that he already knew that solving those 3 questions would get him into the S-Class. Flame starts to think that if he did knew beforehand then he is a dangerous person, while Uziel is stuck with Ma Yuziong, and is wanting someone take him off him. As Yuziong asks him about his reason for coming here, and telling him to not listen to people around him, asking if he had a special reason for coming here, to which he replies, he doesn't, though the real reason was that he was told to do so. While Uziel wonders what got Yuzeong to become so interested in him, Kyle tells them to stop the chat, as they're going to look over the exam problems now. And he starts to talk about the 3 questions from hell that appeared in the placement exam. While trying to flex that he solved one of those, though he is quite nervous due to students from S grade are here, since he was actually going to use this to expand his influence. But he notices Uziel, thinking he might have a chance if it's him since Uziel got the lowest score in placement exam. He smirks, trying to show off that he is better than him. He starts to write his method of solving the questions. And Ma Yuzeong is completely ignoring him, while focusing on Uziel, and asks Uziel if he thinks Kyle is right. Though Uziel is speechless since he doesn't even get what Kyle is trying to do, nor does he knows what the 3 questions from hell are. But he decides to be honest and simply says that he doesn't know, which is heard by Kyle. All the students are in surprise as they misunderstand as him saying that Kyle is wrong. Uziel looks around wondering why is everyone looking at him like that. While Kyle is pissed, asking he really thinks that he is doing it wrong. He then calls Uziel out to come and solve it himself in front of everyone, about which he is completely in shock. As he looks over to Ma Yuzeong, who starts to hype him up, realizing that Yuzeong is doing it on purpose. So as such he starts to walk over to the blackboard, stared at by everyone. He wears his glasses, realizing that the question is more like a pun quiz. For example, a mage cast a spell, saying, "D earth shed tears," and there was double the amount of dirt than before. Why would that be? And for that the answer is simple: if dirt cries, it's in a state of decomposture. As ridiculous as it sounds, it's really this kind of problem, though Kyle over there solved it like a math problem. Even though his method was wrong, he did got the right answer by luck, as if there was a similar problem, he would get it wrong, as he tells Kyle he cannot show him the way it's supposed to be solved, but he can tell where he was wrong. He asks Kyle, what if instead of earth, it was water or wind, do you think your method will work then? And Kyle replies that he would just use a different one then. Though Uziel tells him then everything has to be done differently. And it was only luck that he got the answer right, not because it was what the test maker intended you to do. And hearing all that, Kyle is left speechless. But he does agrees with Uziel. Uziel on the other hand wonders if he killed his confidence too much, as he shows him the right way to solve. And all the students starts to learn it as well. But on the other hand, Flame is in shock about the fact that other students are actually writing what he is saying. And both Bion and Azel should have gotten in argument as well, but they are distracted by the problem. As she starts to wonder if story going like this is really okay. Now after the class, Ma Yuzeong excitedly leaves telling Uziel that he will see him tomorrow. And due to which, Uziel is worried as he claims that he doesn't want to see him ever. And he assumes that it's probably due to Terravon. While leaving, he also starts to wonder just why did that staff came to him, since there wasn't any instance of anyone else using it besides Flame. And in the hallway he finds Bion waiting for someone. He thinks she might be waiting for someone, but ignores her and tries to leave. Though suddenly she calls him out, saying that she wants to ask him something. Which surprises Uziel as he asks her, what is it, and she asks him about the solution earlier and why didn't he explain it. Uziel is lost for words as in reality, it's not that he didn't but he can't since it's a nonsensical quiz and he makes an excuse that he just didn't had anything to say. But she takes it the wrong way, that it was just that he didn't wanted to announce the solution at that place. Uziel is surprised to hear that, but she makes him an offer that she will compensate him for the solution, asking him to explain the solution to her. Which shocks him, as he realizes that once again he is involved in some major plot point. But nonetheless he agrees, and we see both of them sitting in a library. Uziel questions her on why is she paying him simply to help her understand 3 questions on a placement test, to which she replies, she got her reasons, hence Uziel goes along with her request, calling her, my lady, though he asks her, isn't she embarrassed to ask him for help, since he got all the other questions wrong? She replies, not at all, in fact she is embarrassed that she still doesn't know the solutions to these problems. And that she is willing to do anything to find the answer, which gets Uziel thinking of her as a model student, but he does ask, why specifically him? As she is a princess, she should have a lot of friends. She tells him out of all the freshman students, only 3 people got these questions right, including you. Which confuses Uziel, and she adds that these questions were meant to be unsolvable, yet Ma Yuzeong, Flame and Uziel were able to solve it. Uziel is shocked upon hearing that no one was able to solve that, which prompts Bion to ask him if he didn't realize that. And with this he finally realizes how he got in S class. and also why Flame held him back, as he doesn't know the details of world building or about those questions. But Flame is different, since she has read the entire novel. Even without playing the game, she knows most of the setting, including those questions. And since he is an extra who wasn't in the novel, she had no choice but to acknowledge his existence. As he finally realizes her reason for her to act that way, and laments it, while Beyond asks, why does he look like it, to which he shrugs it off. He reminds Beyond about their deal, that she will fulfill one of his requests, as thanks for helping her. And hence he puts down his request to alter his staff into a magic sword. She is surprised to hear that since only low-level mercenaries uses those kinds of weapons. But he simply replies to her that it suits his style better, though in reality he cannot tell her that he is a cripple. She pauses for a moment, and replies, she will get it done, would be quite easy. Now they move on to the questions, and way to solve the first one is a change of perspective. Though that leaves her a bit confused, as her weakness is that she uses magic strictly from textbook, and she's stuck in a rut. Though she only realizes it in her second year after losing to Flame in a bad way. He decides to push her in the right direction, even if he cannot give her important insights right now. And such he asks her if she knows what nonsense quiz is by any chance. She gets taken back by a bit, and replies she does think she have. Uziel starts off with an example, and asks her, what's between a knee and a knee? She ponders for a moment and answers, the back of a knee. But Uziel corrects her, saying that the answer is, and, which she asks, how? And he replies, that he asked what is between a knee and a knee. Hearing which pisses her off. But he tells her to calm down and look at the questions, since they have to solved using her creativity. And he questions her, if it's possible to memorize creativity, which leaves her with no answer. As she replies, no, and Uziel smiles. And tells her that knowing many spells and techniques are important, but there is something more important for a mage. It is to look at the world beyond the boundaries of your thought. Magic can grow with even the slightest of change. As she only thinks about stuff as she sees them, and spells aren't something to just learn and cast. And even though she is better than Uziel in analytical thinking and judgment, she lacks the most important quality, which is creativity. Hearing all that, she really starts to get into it and serious. Noting she looks a lot more serious, he tries to tone it down and asks her if she understood what he was trying to say. She replies with a confident face that she did. On the other hand, it surprises Uziel, as he himself has no idea what he is talking about. Now with that out of the way, they move on the next example. What did the man say to the horse before putting him to the bed? And she starts to think. She replies, she doesn't know, and Uziel answers, it's bedtime. Again he asks, why don't beds work hard? She again doesn't know, and he answers, because they are always lying down on the job. He once again asks, what happened when rock, paper, and scissors entered the race? Now slightly irritated, she again says the same thing and Uziel answers, rock began to roll, but paper and scissors were stationary. Now at this point she starts to get quite irritated since she is unable to answer anything. Which Uziel also realizes that she could explode any moment now. Now he asks her once more, what did the cloud say to the ocean when it was raining? She starts to ponder and think, while Uziel is praying this time that she gets the answer. And she answers, that it's getting a bit emotional, which surprises Uziel. And at last he tells her that she got the right answer. Hearing which she gets really excited and happy. Which surprises Uziel as he thinks this is the first time he is seeing her smile in both game and reality. He praises her by saying that as expected of a princess, your creativity is on another level. Which she accepts, albeit a bit embarrassed, and asks for the next question, while Uziel chuckles. And just like that, time passes and it gets night. And we see Uziel walking, being all exhausted and spending 3 hours on those nonsense questions with her. Though he didn't expected her to believe what he said. She is undoubtedly an excellent magician with a sharp mind, but her weakness is her rigid way of thinking. Though he feels bad about taking advantage of her like this, he needs to modify Terravon into a sword quickly. And now he goes on to search for the books he needs for his class. And he looks around and finds the shop that he was looking for. Now inside the store he notes that it's quite run down. But he does know about the owner, who has a habit of watching people while pretending to be asleep. But in this store, the study notes of Marella, the student who graduated at the top of the academy 10 years ago, is hidden. In-game a screen would show it with a press of a button. But in reality, a textbook is needed for major, and your grade will also depend on which book you choose. Uziel before used to buy books from famous stores, but later he realized that good ones are hidden in one without any signs. And if he were to take magic engineering classes with the study notes of Marella, he will easily get full marks, though even using bulbul glasses would get decent marks, but he also needs the hidden recipe. Looking around, he finally finds it tucked into a corner. As he takes out his hand and reaches for it, another hand comes for the same book and touches him. And that person is Azel. She asks if he knows her, to which he replies, she is famous, and she then also remembers Uziel from the study group, Beck Uziel. Though Uziel wonders if she doesn't remember him from before entering the academy. She tells him that she enjoyed the debate, but it was unfortunate that he couldn't finish the explanation, and Uziel remembers that she also couldn't figure out those questions fully. And she simply leaves, saying, "It was nice meeting you." As Uziel is thankful that the book didn't got taken. But he does wonder why would she be here? Seeing a book she pulls out, while sighing in relief. Uziel notices, and wonders if it's due to that? As this bookstore deals with used books, only poor students like him come here. And as someone from a fallen family, she also probably didn't had any choice but to come here. Her father was probably killed by dark demonic humans. It's quite sad for a princess like her to buy books from here and worrying about the price since she doesn't have money. On top of that, she faced an unfortunate ending in the original novel and died before even Flame, who became the main character. She is probably the most unfortunate character in this world. He comes besides and puts down a whole bunch of books, buying them. As he smiles towards her, while she looks a bit irritated. He asks her, what, and she was about to call him a name for picking such books, but changes the line to, that he picked some interesting books, though Uziel catches on that she was about to call him names. He asks her, like what, she replies, why is he reading topics like, advanced ceiling theory, it's an ancient magic involving the use of item, in the current world magical engineering is so advanced, this skill is rarely used. He replies, he knows that it doesn't have much use, but that is the reason he is taking it. She is surprised to hear that, and he tells her that everyone is thinking same as her, which makes it easier for him to get better grades in this class. She is quite confused by his statement, as Uziel leaves. But what Azel said is true, but this is the reason he can spend little time on it and still get good grades compared to other classes. And with this he would not have any issues this semester. Now on to the second day, Azel is going to attend class for nihility. Since it's easy to get good grades in, it shouldn't be too bad. But as she enters, she notices there already are a lot of students. As students comment that the news is spread about this being a class to easily get good grades in, hence everyone is attending it. As Azel also thinks the same, but she just decides to do better in other classes. Fast forward as the classes ends, everyone starts to leave. But for Azel it's troubling, since it will be hard to get scholarship as too many people are signing up for the same class. She starts to get hungry, and wonders if she should get a meal. She counts her meal tickets, noting that she should only get bread this time, as she only have 60 meal tickets for this semester. Suddenly as she is walking by, she notices something. And it's Uziel, who she sees attending classes. She wonders what is he doing there, and notices it's due to the lecture. She also notices there aren't many students, and all of them are who scored low grades. And this lecture would probably get cancelled at this rate. But suddenly she gets a thought, that if she signs up for this class, she would be able to raise her grades without putting too much effort. And if she uses that saved time for other subjects, she will be able to earn more scholarship money. And she gets curious about Uziel on how did he knew that this subject would be easy to score in. And perhaps he planned all of his classes in such a way that it makes his life easier. But she walks away, ignoring the thought, deeming it not possible, and a coincidence. Now in the lecture, Professor Layden explains that the founding mage in white spread magic all over the world which allowed humans and other species to learn magic. He taught the elves, nature class magic. And to the dwarfs, matter magic. And to humans, elemental magic, and he traveled to heavens afterwards. As the professor keeps going on, Uziel is already sick and wonders how is he going to go through this for 3 whole years? But he do realize that this lecture is of importance, since it might give him some clues about the true ending. Though, it's just his assumption. And, he looks besides himself, noticing something. It's Azel, while he wonders what is she doing here. As he does not remember any of the main character taking this class, though he ignores it since it doesn't matter to him. The professor continues that humans were not satisfied with what they were given, hence they traveled and began to steal magic of other species. Even that wasn't enough, but they couldn't learn any more than that. The founding mage left behind the 12 divine moons and disappeared. And he asks the class question if they know anything about them, and Azel answers that they are known as guardians who protect the balance of power, and it is said that they scattered throughout the continent, carrying out their duties until 1,000 years ago. Professor agrees with her and explains that each of them had special power given to them as well. For example, the divine moon that symbolized summer. The 6th moon of the red summer wielded a red flame, and it is said that those flames never dies out. And if they want to see it, they can go to deep sea of Alamanca. They are still there, which Uziel thinks if he's serious about letting them go there. Since if a living being entered the domain of the king of the seas, they would die right away. The professor explains about the Levian's coast. A great whirlpool that appeared in the middle of the ocean has been frozen solid by the 12th moon of the blue winter. And each of the moon has individual power, and it is said that a miracle would occur if they all gather together. One of the students asks about the miracle, to which professor replies that no one knows, as they have fallen asleep 1,000 years ago. Uziel agrees, but remembers that he did met some of them by playing the game, but it was only 5 and that too through limited time events. And it was only possible because he gathered information from the community, and there weren't other players who managed to meet more than he did. And if he assumes correct, they probably have something to do with the true ending. Since if no one has managed to reach true ending, then the answers must lie in contents that no one ever reached, but he was only able to meet 5, that too after risking his life multiple times. But he has no choice but to do that again. Now we switch scenes to an open training field with Professor teaching. It's Hongyil who instructs the students. Their attacks doesn't matter if it cannot hit the enemy. As she is walking by and seeing the students, an attack comes from over her head, creating a huge explosion which she takes notices of. But we see target is still completely unscathed, while she observes and calls it quite terrible. And we see it's Bion who launched the attack, as she gets frustrated upon her mother's words and her own failure. Now after the training session, we see her sitting on the side, with a gloomy face, for showing a bad side of her in front of her mother, thinking that she must be disappointed in her. But suddenly a girl calls her out, asking her if she is okay. She sits beside her, and compliments Bion for how amazing she is, which confuses Bion. And she replies, it's due to the fact even when she used same magic as her, it was several times stronger. Thought Bion replies, that it doesn't matter, she couldn't even aim right. The girl tries to cheer her up, with compliments about how cool and incredible her magic is. Seeing her talk, Bion realizes that she is a fire-type magic as well, and remembering her name was Arzhuang, and that she has heard of her before. She is someone who is called as the next generation genius of fire attribute. Though Bion thought she must be nothing compared to her, she tells Arzhuang that it must be nice for her to have such high accuracy. Though Arzhuang tells her, if she practices more, then it would be nothing for her, which Bion calls rubbish and gets up. But Bion does tell her that talking to her did made her feel better, as she leaves saying her goodbye. And right after she leaves, Arzhuang's expression changes to something more serious. Now as Bion arrives in her room, someone calls her. And it's her personal maid, Ye Terin, who welcomes her back. She serves Bion some drink and ginseng candy, and starts about the staff remodeling commission that Bion asked of her. She informs Bion that since the staff is so good, hence a top-grade magic sword will be made. And there is something she found questionable, which Bion asks, what? She tells Bion that the staff continuously suck in the owner's mana, which surprises Bion. She asks, then wouldn't that be a dark demonic tool, and her maid tells her that it's different, since it is consistently in resonance with nature's energy. Hearing about it, Bion is quite surprised, as she wonders why does such a garbage staff is high middle class, and her maid tells her that it's exactly the reason that is a middle high class. And Bion asks, what do you mean? And her maid answers, that its original ability would drastically strengthen users' mana, making it a high class or even higher, but because it sucks in mana just by holding it, it was downscaled to a middle high class one, which greatly surprises Bion. Bion wonders how could a student wield that, which is what her maid is also confused about. Bion does realize that it wasn't there for them to resonate in the first place, but most students won't even use it, even if given to them. And even though she is confused, she leaves it to Uziel to figure it out, as she starts to think that he is quite unique. Now fast forward a few days later, and in the class professor is again giving a lecture about attack magic. As the professor explains that attack magic is different from normal magic, hence the mana orbitology class is mandatory. And from today, for their PvP battles, they will be learning, shooting, and target. And as such, he begins the class with a water attribute question and formula. None of them have any answers, as it's a water attribute, and without being a water attribute major, the answer is impossible. And they wonder if the teacher is just trying to bother them, while Uziel is yawning from boredom. As he is wondering why the classes are harder than Korean, the teacher catches him slacking off. And he calls Uziel out to solve the question. And shortly after, Uziel completely solves it, surprising the professor. The professor is very impressed by him, and asks if he is of a water attribute major, to which he replies, he isn't. And while Uziel is looking at him with no words to say. Now after the class, as Uziel is leaving, someone calls him out. And we see it's Uziel, who tells Uziel that she has a question for him. Uziel thinks that after observing him, she has determined that he is definitely smart, unrelated to his grades, even when compared to top rankers. As she thinks back to when he solved the question, making her utterly shocked. Since that question was at the level of university, probably even professor level, even if Stella is a place where geniuses gather, she gets curious about his true identity and origins. And at first she was unsure, but now she is certain that he has a course registration strategy. And hence, she asks him, what his next class going to be, as she looks to obtain his strategy. Uziel is a bit taken back by her questions. Though he asks her if she is interested in him or something, to which she calls it as gross. Uziel wonders just what is he doing, and asks her the reason, and she replies that she researched him and all the class he is taking are one where you can get high scores easily. She asks him straight about his strategy, and where did he got it? Since it's something quite important to her, and Uziel just tells her that it's a coincidence. And just simply tries to leave after that, but she tells him to wait. Seeing him walk away like this, gets her quite desperate. As she runs behind him, telling him to hold on, and Uziel tells her to learn it from someone else, since there are a lot of smart people here. Or she can also just follow him since she looked it up, but she tells him that anyone who take Divine Moon Studies gets an A+ no matter, but if she registers for other classes that he is taking then it could impact his grade negatively as well. He notices her sincerity, since if she doesn't get the scholarship, she will lose out the most, but even then she is thinking about others. Even though she is annoying, a female lead is a female lead after all. And Uziel asks him if he could recommend her some courses that are easy to get good grades in, while Uziel tells her that if she really thinks looking like that would fool him. But she says that her stress goes away when she looks at her own face, which leaves Uziel speechless. Though she calls it out as a joke, and tells him that she prepared a compensation for him in return, which gets Uziel thinking that why do these people love to offer compensations? She asks him if he knows about the ghost story of the 7th tower, which surprises him. He replies he does, which prompts Uziel to say, not many does, sign it's an abandoned building that disappeared. And that there are a bunch of barriers where the tower used to be to prevent people from close, but before she completes, Uziel stops her. And she asks if everything is alright, as thinking about it, Uziel says he is going to go insane since it's a really big information. Since with this, Flame can greatly increase her affection with the male protagonist. And since Flame knows this information, meaning Uziel knows it as well in the original novel, and she must only give this information to the male protagonist, not to an extra like Uziel. And hence, Uziel leaves, telling her that he doesn't want to listen since it sounds boring. She asks if he is afraid of ghosts, but Uziel replies he will just tell her for free, which prompts Uziel to poke him that he was acting like he wasn't going to. Did he change his mind? To which he hits back that it's his mind after all. Though Uziel is actually taken by her sincerity that she wants to actually give him something. He tells her it's not related to grades, but it will be super useful to her. He tells her to take the meditation journey into the abyss as her liberal arts class. She asks if he is into cultivation, since taking meditation class and Divine Moon Studies together, and he replies, not at all. Uziel explains that his master was in a position like her, and with this class she was able to increase her magic power greatly. She asks, just through meditation, and he replies, indeed. Though it's not known yet, but for bishops who uses large-scale destruction magic, meditation is extremely important. Since precise casting comes from formulas and equations, but ultimately comes from mind, which moves mana. He tells her to keep it a secret as he only told her because she is cute, to which she hits back since he called her ugly earlier. But ultimately, she is happy and smiles after receiving the information. She leaves thanking him that she will join it even if it doesn't help her grades. Though Uziel does get worried on how it will affect the future since he told her this. But if he just leaves her be, she will die a tragic death in this life as well. And it would be nice if meditation could be helpful to her. Though suddenly he realizes that he is a mage too, and he should train as well. Since Baek Uziel in-game trains his body strictly, and awakens his magic revelation delay physique and grows immensely. In-game, you could just gain XP with just pushing a button, but here it could be done directly, since it's been quite lately as well he wasn't able to gain any experience. As he smiles deciding to train, and thanks Azel for making him remember to train as well. Fast forward and he arrives at his dorm, which is quite large, and every student in this academy reside in dorms. The dorm system was just a little extra system in the game, but for Baek Uziel it was his only home since his village had burnt down. And they are also divided according to your class. The size stays the same, but the number of people in room differs depending on the class. And of course S-class get the highest floors to themselves. Now finally when he is alone, Uziel starts his training. As stats aren't the only thing, he needs to get used to the body as well. In the game, Baek Uziel was a genius who manifested sword aura by utilizing the fact that mana is endlessly circulating in and out of him. No one paid attention to him, but Baek Uziel is a genius sword master who was the only person in this world to reach the pinnacle of swordsmanship. And now he needs to walk down that path one more time. His breathing dictates the flow of mana in his body, and by slowly increasing the amount of mana intake, soon he will be able to take in enough at once. Skills don't just level up by collecting XP, you need to keep using them, which means all you have to do is train. The time passes and it gets morning. And Uziel also finishes up and opens his eyes. He feels the same sensation that Baek Uziel did when he did this. And for someone who accepted his disease from an early age, even though it's faint, he can feel it. His mana leakage syndrome levels up, along with his blink spell as well. And with his he is one step closer to his goal, and we see him determined to find the true ending. Now we switch scenes, and see Flame in an open grass field, which is created with magic along with wind as well, but they feel real. The Stellar Dome is a pocket dimension set up on the Academy campus. It allows to freely manipulate the size of the place as well as its features. All sports and other type of events, along with dungeons, gates and monster training are all held here. We see a whole lot of students have gathered up in the grass field, with Flame counting a total of 141 people. 50 each from A1 and A2, and 41 from S-class, though according to the novel there should have been 39 from S-class. As she expected it to be 40 including her, but to her surprise one more was added. As she looks over to Uziel, wondering where did he came from. And in the novel there were 1,140 students, and with her addition, it became 1141, which means BAE Uziel was in the original novel as well. She starts to get a bit nervous, and decides to find out things slowly, assuring herself that she is the only person who knows the novel, after all. As she notes that the lesson should be starting soon, suddenly she overhears someone asking Jeremy about his registration. And Jeremy tells them that he is done with it, and many students signs up for same classes as he does as well. And with a smile on his face, he tells them to let's have fun together. And we see Flame observing him from a distance. That he is the Prince Jeremy. And in the novel, he was obsessed with Azel, and after getting rejected by her, he became a villain in the end. She also notes even though he is smiling, his actions are all calculated, and hence she tries to keep her distance from him. Though Jeremy notes Flame looking at him. And he smiles towards her, and waves. She waves back, noting he is quite handsome and seeing the reason so many people hang behind him, and that his clique is probably the most conspicuous in school. But she picks herself up and states that since this is reality now, she needs to prepare for the future. Though Jeremy also observes her and gives off a faint smirk. Now Professor Hanwell arrives, and starts with a simple training session first to know their skill level in order to teach them properly. And explains that he will be directing the training and those who don't like can get out. And professors also have the right to take or give away points, hence they will be expelled if they fall below a certain number. Now he starts to explain the training, which is going to be a dungeon mock training, and they will be using scenarios that happens in dungeons, as well as traps and monsters. They will get 4 points to take down a monster of risk level 1, and 8 points for a monster of risk level 2. And 20 points if they get the point stick. And the top 5 students will receive reward and shop privileges, and students with 0 points will have their points taken away. They can also form team if they want, but then the points will also be divided amongst the team. And taking out other students will reward you with their points as well, and with that he leaves telling them good luck. and suddenly the ground starts to shake, and a huge tree root sprouts from the ground. With Flame noticing that it's the Jack and the Beanstalk map. We see all the students trapped in forest, and Flame getting ready to go. Suddenly someone calls her out, and it's Jackie who asks her if she is going to be alone again. Even though forming a team is advantageous, she decides to still go alone. Jackie replies that she understands, since she would have to distribute her points between teammates, which Flame thinks is her being sarcastic, and as she leaves while Flame saying, "next time." Looking at her, Flame feels like that she is mimicking her. Now an hour later and we see Flame defeating monsters and wondering when would this test end. Suddenly she notices the plants coming at her, but she is able to block them with her defensive spell. Noting that it's not just monsters, but the field itself also attacks, even the dungeon practical of this academy cannot be underestimated. And so far she has collected 18 points, though not bad, it could be covered with a single point stick. And as such she gets on the move again. Suddenly she notices a presence in the field. Wondering if it's a monster at first, but the silhouette she knows it's a person, but she is confused and surprised on how could a student conceal their presence to this extent. She decided to move closer, since she is also hiding her presence using one with nature skill, and with her specialties, bind, destruction, defense and healing, it's an okay choice to ambush someone. As she gets close to him, she is surprised that it's Beck Uziel, and she wonders if he is going alone as well. She remembers many students trying to form a faction with him, but he rejected all of them, as she doesn't get the way he thinks. But just then she notices the point stick in his hand and that he already got one. She realizes that it's the perfect chance for her, and that she is going to test Uziel. She uses a spell, Light Cluster. Calculating the distance between them, she determines that he won't be able to perform any defensive tactic at such a distance. She starts to charge up her spell and is enveloped in yellow light. And she attacks using her skill, Light Bullet. As the attacks get close to him, Uziel suddenly notices and looks back, and immediately uses Blink, surprising Flame. And she sees him completely disappear from the point of attack. She grips her staff tightly and is shocked on how could he dodge a second-class spell at that distance. In the meantime, Uziel is using Blink to get his distance from her. Looking at her, he wonders if she is trying to kill him or something, using a spell like that out of nowhere. If his mana leakage syndrome level didn't increase, he would have been in trouble. He does have 2 Blink left, and he thinks he could take her on at some point due to terrain advantage, though he notes that avoiding would be the best option. He uses 2 more of his Blinks repeatedly, and gets some distance with her, since his goal is to become 5th place, so he is not going to take risks. Because the reward for the 5th place is Ethelic Roots, which increases both health and strength by certain amount. As he is walking around, knowing that top 4 spots will be taken by main characters, and they only need 3 more point sticks to do so. Suddenly he hears someone, look who it is. It's a bunch of extras with full confidence who thinks they can take Uziel on. While Uziel looks simply uninterested, wondering who is he. Uziel remembers the guy to be Raiden who is famous in school these days. A member of Uslek, Jeremy's pushover clique. And he notices that he does have 3 point sticks. Their group talks how Uziel has collected sticks despite being a pushover, and that he is a failed student who cheated to get to S class. He mocks Uziel that Stella has fallen for them to admit him into S class for solving 3 questions, which prompts Uziel to think they are just repeating lines. Riordan tells Uziel to give up his point stick to them, though he simply replies he don't want to, and Raiden asks if he is resisting them. He points his wand at Uziel and asks if he could take all of them alone. As he is mocking Uziel, Uziel is wondering what to do, noting that it would be hard to face Raiden who is from a famous family with only 1st class Blink, though it would be different if he had 3. But he counts the stick in his hand as a variable, and the fact that the location is dungeon. Uziel points his stick towards them and tells them to take it. As Raiden is all confident and is ready to take it, Uziel suddenly smirks, as he uses Blink to immediately get close to Raiden, which surprises Raiden as Uziel is smirking right before his face. As Uziel hits him directly with point stick, though his attack gets blocked by a defensive ability, Raiden gets pissed, as he shouts at him but stops in the middle, because Uziel has disappeared. He suddenly hears his voice and looks back, only to find Uziel standing behind him, and with one of his point stick in his hand, along with a smirk on his face, thanking Raiden for it. He angrily demands it back from him, which Uziel obviously denies. Though Uziel thinks point sticks are quite efficient, he learned it coincidentally while playing the game. But the point sticks are actually bug items. They have unnaturally high durability, which allows them to not get destroyed by the magic of students and strength of most magic tools. For other people it's more helpful to use magic, but for Uziel who fights physically, a weapon with strong attack power can be used perfectly. Raiden angrily orders his group to attack Uziel. But just then the dungeon starts to move, as Raiden orders everyone to prepare their magic and to not lose sight of him. As Uziel is running away, one of them spots him, and they immediately attack him with their spells. Uziel praises them to better than he expected, though he dodges it with blink. They are completely lost, noting that he is too fast to be found, while for Uziel who played PvP for a long time, using terrain to his advantage is a piece of cake. As Raiden notes that he just needs one hit, his group informs him about the dungeon, though he orders them to stay calm, since he is nearby and wait for the dungeon to stop. And if their magic fails, there will be a rebound, so they have to be careful. But before he could complete his sentence, Uziel appears right in front of him, and once again hits him. Though they are able to block the attack, but their wand starts to act up, and causes a huge magic rebound. With them on the ground, Uziel notes that it's already over. As he is pissed at him, Uziel shows him another one of his stick, that he will be taking. He makes fun of them, that if he gets a girlfriend later, he will give one of them to her as a gift, while they are in shock on when did he got it. He shouts at Uziel to give them back, but Uziel starts to leave, noting that taking last one will be annoying. As he uses Blink spell to again get away. As their group is screaming at him, we also see a girl was observing their battle. Now Uziel is leisurely walking around the field, chuckling that he hit a jackpot. Knowing that if he fought normally, he would have been robbed, but since it's a dungeon it's different, which he calls an adult's experience. Suddenly we see a spell coming at him from a distance, and Uziel wonders if he is just feeling things, since he is feeling something strange. Somewhere, as he looks back completing in sentence in shock, and seeing a huge fire spell coming right towards him. As the spell reaches him, he screams at top of his lungs, "What the hell?" But he is able to dodge it, albeit barely. Looking at the impact he calls it was almost troubling, and notices about the spell. As Bion arrives, asking him on why didn't he took the other stick from those people. On the other hand, Uziel is surprised to see her, wondering, what is she doing here? He tells her, it wasn't that he didn't, but he couldn't, and it shouldn't matter to her whether he is taking their sticks or not. Which kind of leaves her speechless, as she doesn't say anything. And suddenly it hits Uziel as well, and he gets pissed at her for waiting for him to attack them and then take all the sticks from him at once, even though he taught her before. Though she simply replies that she is of royal blood and tells Uziel to come at her, since just taking objects from a commoner isn't dignified and hence she will battle him and take it properly. Though he calls her out for BS since she is just robbing a weakling, but she responds back that she saw him joking around with them since the beginning, as he didn't even face them with proper magic. We go back in time a bit before, as Bion walking around, hears some noises. She notes the sound of talking and it's Raiden's group, and also notices that it's Uziel. She wonders if she should attack, but realizes that even for her taking on 6 people alone would be hard. She plans to attack them when they are out of stamina, though suddenly she sees something surprising, which is Uziel going against the Raiden's group alone, and that he isn't using any other spells than Blink. Even though they are much weaker than her, they are still elite mages, and if he is good enough to joke around with them, and she bites her lip in frustration, stating that she will use her full power to burn him. And as such she attacks him with another spell. But he once again dodges, and jumps up, and notices another spell coming for him, in mid-air. He then uses Blink twice to dodge the attack and land on the ground. Though Hong Bion just stares at him with a bit of frustration in her eyes. While Uziel notes that as expected of her, it was quite dangerous. If he haven't trained his intuition in advance it would have been bad. Though using 2 blinks to dodge is quite difficult, and he wonders if there is any other way. Bion asks if he is not going to take out his staff. He replies, if she doesn't remember about taking it, and Bion asks him about the basic staff that was given to him when entered. But he does forgot about it, since he wasn't going to use it anyways. She gets irritated and tells him that he is joking as always, thinking to herself that she is this desperate, while a brainless commoner always jokes like this. She tells him to go all out against her unlike he did with other losers. Even though he is always serious, it's just he cannot use magic. She starts flaring up her magic, which makes Uziel nervous, as she states that if he doesn't, she will really kill him. We see Bion is determined to defeat Uziel, And such she launches multiple fireballs at him, which he dodges barely. And another one he dodges by ducking. As he notices the damage and explosion it causes behind him. He notes that even if he dodges with blink, the radius of the attack is too broad. He wonders what should he do, and suddenly hears a sound. It's the sound of the field again acting up, which he takes advantage of. And he immediately uses blink to escape the blast and take cover behind one of the tree. He realizes that he was lucky, but it is going to be harder next time. And even if he gets close to her, the flame surrounding her body will explode the moment he gets near. And he knows since he lost many PvPs against fire class mages. Knowing that she is much stronger than one would expect. He comes out while thinking if it was a flat land, he would have lost in a minute. More like, it wouldn't even be a valid fight. And we see many flaming arrows are coming towards him, as he grips the point sticks tightly. And even then he just does not intend to sit and do nothing. And hence, he rushes in right inside the flames. As the flaming arrows are coming towards him, he observes them closely. The arrows becomes a shape of magic for him, and he is able to see them. And just like that he counters those flaming arrows using just only a point stick. Which shocks Bion, saying is it even possible to deflect magic using a weapon? On the other hand, Uziel's senses starts to fade, and the feeling of moving his body and facing a mage, not in a game where you play with mouse and keyboard. It's vivid, he can feel the flow of mana surging as if he will be able to grasp it with his own hands, his sixth sense that feels as familiar as sight or hearing. Seeing it, she wonders just how is it possible. In fact, since the location is full of trees, it should be much more advantageous for her, and as such she bites her lips in frustration. She states that she is going to use even stronger magic then. Uziel also notes that he cannot keep defending, he needs to use this sticks to destroy her magic shield somehow. As she is completely surrounded by flame, he goes around her, and notices an opportunity, and immediately uses blink to get close to her. She also gets surprised by it, and activates her spell as well, Lighter Crash. Though he already knows about it, it's a spell used by fire class bishops that engage in close combat. It causes a knockback for those within 2-meter radius. And he starts to smirk, since he has experienced it tons of times, and as such he just dodges by stepping out of the circle. Which surprises Bion, and then he immediately gets back in. And he strikes upon her shield, which starts to crack, as she is in shock. Her shield breaks and it leaves her defenseless. And he sits down in front of her, telling her that he won. She blushes due to being embarrassed of defeat. Asking him, just who is he, to which he replies, just a normal student. And now he also calls her out, to come out of hiding. And that person being, Flame. She walks out, telling them, that she wasn't hiding, and asks Uziel, how did he knew? He replies, it was just a feeling, though in reality it was his sixth sense skill. But Flame does not believe it, and asks him about breaking the magic barrier using training sticks. And if that was a feeling as well? With this Uziel realizes that this kind of bug was not in the novel, though he cannot tell her the truth. Hence he just tells her that it's really sturdy, and she replies, training devices has limits, you just thought you could break the magic shield using that, why do you think normal knights disappeared from this world, hearing which leaves Uziel with no response. And Flame tells her that she thought he was weird before, but asks, just who is he? Bion is also watching them with full curiosity, and Uziel thinks that it has already come to this, despite not even being a month yet. He wonders if he should reveal his identity, but it would be dangerous since Flame holds no favor for him. Hence he just tells Flame that he might look suspicious, but he is not a bad person to her. She asks its meaning, and he replies that he would want to help her, in fact. Again she is confused, wondering about Uziel's identity. And Uziel just starts to leave seeing the opportunity, telling her that he would like to talk more, but he doesn't have time. As he is leaving, he gets hit from behind by point sticks. And it's Bion who threw them, and she is also slightly taken back by it. And Uziel turns around, nagging that she should use words if she has complaints, but she replies she thought he would catch them, since he could dodge magic and traps. But Uziel knows that even his sixth sense has its limits, as its sustainment depends on his mind power, and since it's currently bottomed out, he has severe migraines right now. He asks Bion on why did she threw them, she tells him to take it since she lost. And Uziel wonders if it's her pride, but if he takes them all, his ranking would increase too much, and such he picks up only one. While smiling, he tells them to take the rest. And leaves, thinking himself as a man who shows kindness to defeated opponent, and calls himself quite cool. while both Flame and Beyond calls him an idiot and a commoner with no common sense. And at the same time, in a different location, we see the test is being watched on some big screens. As someone says, that S-class students this year are really incredible. And it's some big shots, Magic Council Elder Telix, and Blue Mage Tower Board of Directors, Jarina Eon, who both calls it worth watching and seems to be having fun. Professor Hanwell notes so many big shots are here just to watch these new students in a practical exercise, and they have to if they want to scout talent, and he is sure even other professors are watching this exercise. Suddenly Professor Hanwell notices something on the screen. He notices that how Wan Riang and Ma Yuziong have met. Wan Riang attacks Yuziong with a huge magic spell, but Yuziong jumps up and easily dodges using his spell. The Elder notes it's a third rank jump activated in succession, and are in shock on how is it possible at the age of 17, and Hanwell explains that a normal mage reaches third rank in his mid to late 20s, but Ma Yuziong can use it freely at only 17. The Elders are really in shock, so much that they cannot believe it, as they watch both of them fighting with 3 elements, which again shocks them. Hanwell says that most mages only have 1 element and only after a lot of training they can have 2. And having 3 or more is talent, which they both possess since birth. Suddenly they hear a sound, which shocks Hanwell. And it's a huge bird, which is a hidden boss. The bird screams and flies down to where Yuziong and Wan Riang is. And both of them are quite in shock by it, though the bird simply lands in between them. And on top of it is Azel, who notices that they were in the middle of fighting, and hence she apologizes for interrupting. Hanwell notes that hidden boss is a type of hidden event that only appears once you have abilities past a certain point. They are hard to find, but even harder to defeat. And to think Azel was able to hunt it alone. Though they complain and calls it's unfortunate that she is the daughter of a traitor Grand Duke Molf, otherwise her talent would have bloomed more. Suddenly one of the Elder notices Princess Beyond, and he wonders just who is she fighting, though he notices the spell Uziel is using and is surprised by the fact that Uziel is using Blink. Countless scholars tried to control it over the hundreds of years, but everyone failed, and either died or became crippled and ended giving up. It's a spell which is absolutely impossible to control. And for there to be student who can use it as if it's his hands and feet, which gets all of them wondering just who is that boy. Professor Hanwell replies, it's Beck Uziel, a very unique student who uses Blink as his specialty. Hearing that surprises them as it's very different from the power of all other geniuses. An Elder asks, why doesn't he use his other magic and just jokes around? He could end the battle quickly if he did it. But someone else enters, saying that he is fighting seriously right now. And we learn his name, Eltman Eltwin. He tells everyone that he has been serious from the start, and calls it interesting since they all doesn't seems to notice that. He remembers that the way he fights reminds him of chivalry that once existed in the old generations. They asks, does he mean the chivalry that disappeared along with the cold weapons, and a student as young as that? Hanwell explains, by that they are talking about knights' mentality, those who still use swords within a world that uses magic. The existence of the heroes who have existed since long ago to protect the world against evil. They were said to have always fought evil with a single sword, which the Elder thinks unrealistic, but he also cannot ignore the fact that he is fighting right now by using point stick as a sword, and if that's what Eltman is feeling, who is the headmaster of the Stellar Academy, the best magic academy in the world, and a 9th rank master mage, and one of the only 10 great sages in the continent. And if that great sage is thinking that, now fast forward and the dungeon practical training has ended, and in the S-class exclusive training hall, we see Wan Riang, who is thinking about his battle with Yuziong and how he doesn't feel like he won. As back then, if Azel didn't interrupted them, then he probably would have lost. Thinking about which gets him incredibly frustrated. Since that has been the case with Yuziong since the start, he always half-asses everything, but regardless, he still gets above average results. Even in the practical training, despite creating magic circles around and calculating his movements, Yuziong was still able to fend him off easily. And such he starts to doubt if he could ever reach him, and is the wall of talent really that high? But he picks himself up and states that he just needs to train more. And Princess Beyond also walks into the training center, as she notices Wan Riang practicing. She notices a calm guy like him sure seems quite spiteful today. Though it's not something she should be saying, as she also releases a huge fire attack right on the target. Wan Riang also notices Beyond's mood, as Beyond thinks to herself that even after being yielded the point stick, she got 3rd place. Her mother was satisfied, but if she didn't got that, she would have been disappointed. as she once again angrily lashes at Uziel in her mind while firing out attacks. Which one Riang notes and wonders if something happened to her as well. And he feels that her magic seems much more accurate than earlier, but seeing how explosive her magic is, it's almost impossible to control it precisely. There is no way she could have improved so much in such short period. And Beyond also, as much as she hates to agree, she realizes that Uziel's classes are quite effective. And after switching to the pun quizzes, her magic achievement has increased tremendously. Even though he is just a commoner, his grades are terrible and his personality is the worst, but she is sure that he is the only one who knows the method to supplement her weaknesses. Though despite all that, she is still quite upset. And suddenly she gets called out by her maid that the staff, Reborn, which she requested for remodeling has been completed. She asks if she should give it to Uziel, and Beyond tells her to do so, and just as she is leaving, Beyond suddenly stops her. We see her blushing slightly as her maid asks her, "What's wrong?" Now fast forward at the second main tower. We see Beyond arrives as she heard that Uziel was here, though she notes that this is the place where the research faculties are. Suddenly she wonders why did she even come here. She could have just given it to him at the training hall. If she does this, it would seem like she is following around a commoner. She blushes slightly and thinks to return back. But suddenly she gets called out by someone. And it's teacher Hammeril. She greets her as it's been a while, and Hammeril replies that it feels to her just like yesterday when she was teaching her magic at the castle. She has gotten so old, and asks what brings her here. She replies, she just had some business, but she is going back. Hammeril advises her to go back as well since it's disorderly right now, and tells her that it's hectic because some magic officials have become due to a student named Uziel, hearing which surprises her. She asks about him, and Hammeril replies, since she fought him herself as well, he didn't use magic, right? Knowing that she watched her fight, she gets all down for showing her such an unsightly sight to her teacher whom she respects the most. Hammeril notices it and tells her to not blame herself, since her opponent also tried his best. Beyond asks, even though he didn't use magic, and Hammeril replies, it's because of his creed. Beyond is confused about it, and Hammeril explains, the headmaster who saw him fight said that he thought he was trying to revive chivalry, which disappeared many generations ago. She is surprised to hear that as that makes no sense to her. But suddenly she remembers about their fight. That he was definitely using point stick as a sword for their battle. And she wonders if that is why he wanted this magic sword as well. Getting to know this all, she also starts to feel it. Beyond says that if he doesn't use magic it would give him an incredible penalty in the academy, and he would end up receiving penalty points during magic practical training and other things as well, to which Hammeril replies, it's the path he decided to walk. And praising him as incredible, the fact that he pushes himself, even after accomplishing a great achievement of Blink, which makes her think that his creed is real. Now it gets evening and we see her waiting for him. Beyond wonders if he is serious about it, since if he uses chivalry in this age, everyone would mock him. And starts to feel bad about telling him to not joke around. And Uziel arrives, asking her on what she is doing here. She notices him suddenly and becomes asunder, saying that she is not here because of you, though Uziel never said she was in the first place. As she stares at him with her angry eyes. She blushes and hands him over the Terravon, and Uziel thanks her. Uziel notes that it's a shapeless sword, something expected of a $bit craftsmanship. It is unmatched. He asks if he could keep the box as well, to which she tells him to do as he wish, which irks her off. Though she suddenly calls out his name as he looks at her. And she starts to ask if he is really not going to use any other magic. He just stares at her in confusion, which embarrasses her. And suddenly she just leaves without getting an answer. And Uziel remembers that Professor Hanwell was also saying the same thing to him. That he understood his intentions and he will respect his creed or nonsense like that. Though if he just have the magic sword, he would be safe enough for the next episode, and he goes on to test it out. He arrives at the S-Class training center and takes it out. And starts to channel his mana into the sword. It grows and emits a white energy which is swirling around it. He gets really impressed by it, saying that it's better than he expected. Though he still thinks that it would be better if Flame had it. As she is quite special, even though she is a human, she can use elf, dwarf, and angel magic. Since the staff cannot be used by anyone, as it continuously absorbs the user's mana, and Flame recovers it using the energy of nature and uses this wand as her lethal move. But for him, he doesn't have mana to begin with, though his body is continuously absorbing it. he cannot accumulate it, and is expelled due to the mana revelation delay physique, so the concentration of mana within his breathing is used as Terravon's output. And just like that, he starts to check his status window. And thanks to getting 5th plane, his strength has also increased a bit. And now with a weapon he can increase it directly instead of relying on XP, as he states that he would get buffs since he needs to practice with his sword. Fast forward, and magic defense lecturer, Virion, is going to be teaching them some actual proper magic. He checks upon the students practicing magic shield. Noting there are quite a lot of talented students, and it was good that he lined them up according to their rank, though suddenly he notices something. It's Uziel, whom he calls the infamous S-class student. The commoner S-class student, who resonated with upper middle class staff and got placed 5th in dungeon practical training. He states that he really dislikes him and asks him, why is he just standing? And Uziel makes an excuse that he is learning a different defense technique so he doesn't need to learn basic magic. It pisses him off as he tells Uziel that he is curious about it, and thinks of him as arrogant, and he would have understood if he was learning some succession magic like Princess, but he is just a commoner. And he remembers that he heard he cannot use any magic other than blink as well. He asks Uziel to demonstrate his incredible defense technique to other students. And his opponent would be Morso from B class. And Morso starts to grin with bad intentions. Professor notes that connections are important to him, as Morso is from Scalvan Empire. It would be helpful to give him a good impression of himself, especially if he could perform against an S-class student. Uziel agrees to the duel and they both stand on top of a platform. The other student starts to cheer for Morso to beat and humiliate him publicly. And Uziel notes that they are part of Uslek and Raiden's group. Though he also considers a good opportunity since it's a mandatory class and he cannot do anything since he can't use magic. And he notices Virion smiling and remembering that he has been notorious since the first episode. Uziel also smiles and decides to test the result of his training. Professor explains the rules to be based on attack and defense turns and no magic to be used outside of them. And the first turn is given to Morso. Students comments that Morso will win since he has learned a defensive type Earth class magic which is hard to defend against. We see Jeremy is also there, smiling. And the professor initiates the duel and Morso immediately uses his magic to lift a boulder. Everyone is surprised to see him using a second rank magic since only first rank is allowed during a basic magic practical, wondering if Uziel would be okay. He sends the attack towards Uziel. But Uziel readies his sword and cuts the stone in half. And the magic completely gets erased, which surprises Professor. Though Jeremy looks quite unfazed by it. As Morso is shocked upon seeing his magic just disappear like that. Students notes that he cut the magic with his sword but wonders if it makes the magic disappears. Professor notes that it makes no sense for it to disappear with a slash, but Uziel definitely erased his magic. All the magic has path of mana, and if you accurately cut that, the magic will extinguish. Which gets him thinking, if Uziel really do that. On the other hand, Uziel notes that his sword is better than he thought, though he can barely cut a third rank magic as of now, but it was good he spent all day training with it. And with this it might be doable. Morso is incredibly flustered by the fact he cut his magic and the professor thinks it would be annoying for him if Morso loses here. He then tells Uziel his technique is good, but there is a limit to hitting everything one by one. For example, if too many attacks comes towards him, which gives Morso the hint. And just like that, Morso charges up multiple attacks at once. As everyone notes that it's too much, and wonders why is Professor not stopping the duel. Morso smiles with confidence that this attack will end things for sure. As he fires those multiple projectiles right towards Uziel. Uziel counts 11 stones are coming at him, and if he cannot blink or slice them, then there is only option left. And that is to block all of them. Seeing it, completely shocks him as that was his strongest spell and was blocked so easily. Professor also starts to get agitated since Morso isn't able to do anything. While Uziel was just trying out a technique he saw in a game which is called panning. But Terravon has disadvantage of requiring a lot of mind power, which quickly causes his stamina to fall, and since the defensive power is weaker than blocking a singe item, it's difficult to use in actual fight. But he is relieved that this is just a duel. As the student starts to comment about Morso losing and how impressive Uziel's defensive technique is, Morso starts to lose it. He gets really pissed at Uziel for embarrassing him like this in front of everyone. Though everyone notes that he is still attacking despite his attack turn being over, and the professor also isn't stopping. Morso shouts at Uziel that he won't let him go this time. But suddenly someone calls the professor out. And we see it's Jeremy, who is simply smiling as the professor asks him on what's wrong. He asks him on why is he not giving Uziel his attack turn, which leaves him speechless. The professor sees the gaze of students criticizing him and telling him that he has no right to be a teacher. And he realizes that he went too far since he was too focused on the duel. Though just as he decides to change the turn, he looks to the duel and is shocked. Uziel is standing with his sword pointed at Morso, and has won. Jeremy smiles as well, and other students comments that Uziel is more impressive than they thought. Though suddenly Jeremy's smile turns into an evil grin. Now fast forward, we hear someone grunting from being beaten and asking for forgiveness. We see it's Morso who is being beaten and Jeremy who is beating him. He calls her assistant, telling her to take a look at his friend, since he seems quite sad. His assistant notes him calling Morso his friend and not his loyal subject. Within the Scalvan Empire, where the heir to the throne is decided solely by magic ability, Crown Prince Jeremy Scalvan obtained the role of Crown Prince after beating his brothers at the age of 12. The fact that he is not his loyal subject means that his family has been thrown out of the political world. And that it's not just Morso, since he also caught Jeremy's eyes, that commoner Beck Uziel won't have a comfortable school life either. Now we switch scenes to another class, as students are talking about Uziel being all about chivalry, calling him desperate for attention and the fact that he beaten Morso of Scalvan Empire even though they are quite famous there. We see Flame is also there, who is pissed again hearing about Uziel, as wherever she goes it's just him, though it's not like she wants attention, she just does not like this for some reason. Now it's Professor Maizen Terran, who tells everyone to focus, since alchemy requires measurement and timing as well as perfect temperature control. And today they will be practicing Tyran Fatigue Recovery Potion, annoying Flame, since one misstep will make everything go wrong. Though Flame tries to avoid alchemy since it's difficult, and we see Professor Maizen is scolding one of her students for a slight mistake. With Flame noting that one day she will become blackened and unruly, and in order to prepare for that, she is taking these classes. Though she suddenly hears an evil chuckle from besides her. And she is shocked to see it's Uziel. At first she thought he took the classes to get close to Azel, but later calls him a pervert simply. Fast forward, and Flame is finally finished with her assignment, thanks to the fact that her academic achievement is high. And she quickly tries to observe on what Azel is doing. And she notes that she is decently good. But just then she realizes something. In the original novel, Azel comes across Marella's magic engineering notes. And with that she created high-rank compatible good to the Terran Fatigue Recover Potion in class. Which gets Flame thinking on why is Azel making it normally. Suddenly he overhears Professor scolding Uziel for changing the ingredients. As he is arguing with the teacher about it being better than her solution. Seeing it all unfold shocks Flame. Since he made the quality potion that Azel was supposed to make. Flame notices it to be strange. Wondering how was Uziel able to make the quality of potion that Azel was supposed to make like in the novel. And Professor Maizen calls Uziel out for his bad attitude and mocks him for being a commoner due to his behavior. And Flame again takes notice of that. Since in the original novel the line was supposed to be, "This is why your family fell." And those words deeply impacted and traumatized Azel, who lost her family, and they bothered her until she finished making the potion. But she assumes, what if Beck Uziel knew about it and did this on purpose, to get on the bad side of the professor, and help protect Azel from that? Though she notes that Professor Maizen has quite the influence in Stella, if someone gets on her bad side, there will be after effects on your other classes as well, as she starts to wonder just what is with him, and she wonders, why would he go that far for her? Professor Maizen starts to shout at Uziel due to not finding his tone of voice appropriate, and tells him to bring his parents immediately. And Uziel thinks that he completely forgot about this annoying development since he was too focused on the alchemy, and he tells her that he does not have parents. As the professor is still angry, Uziel thinks there is nothing he can do now, since he is already on her bad side. Though he does remember something, and that is to make kimchi potion and a cola potion tomorrow. Now a few weeks has passed, and Uziel's name is being shouted as everyone is watching. Again it's Professor Maizen, who scolds him, that despite saying repeatedly he is still using ingredients that she haven't taught them yet, but Uziel tells her that he is creating better results by slightly altering her compositions. She gets pissed hearing that, and Uziel uses his bulbul glasses. He sees her information, and we see there is dark demonic erosion progress in her status, which is currently at 21%. Yuzhen notes that it is going just as he planned. In the episode 8, dark demonic erosion boss, Maizen Tyran. She is unable to defeat her dark emotions and undergoes dark demonification, becoming one of the villains. Once her dark demon erosion reaches 90%, she completely becomes a dark demonic human, but while her erosion progress is under 50%, it's impossible to find out through magic. Current it's at 21%, and such he cannot report or prove that she is a dark demonic human, so he needs to continuously provoke her, and once it passes 50%, he would call in the Dark Demon Assassination Squad. For a typical dark demon erosion, there would have been a way to overturn it before she completely underwent dark demonification, but she is a dark demon contractor who underwent a contract with a dark demonic human of her own will. The dark demonic human seeds are already blossoming inside of her, so it's impossible to reverse. And the 4th episode hasn't even started yet, and since she is a strong boss, he needs to be prepared. If he doesn't, she will turn other students into dark demonic humans and threaten Stellar Academy. Professor Maizen leaves, complaining about his bad attitude and warning him that he shouldn't expect to receive any good marks in her subject. And Uziel thinks of it as better, since there won't be additional damage if he receives the attention. Though fast forward, and he gets a shock since the practical exam is a group project. As the other students are worried and Azel is silent. And Uziel notices the atmosphere, and begins his introductions. They all also introduces themselves. Liwan is worried as he thinks that this group is done for, since Professor Maizen always gives bad marks to students she dislikes and for which Uziel feels sorry about them. Azel steps up, saying that they cannot give up like this even then. She explains that the practical exam is assessed by at least 3 alchemists from the Alchemy Castle, that means Professor Maizen cannot ruin their grades by herself. Hearing that, they get a bit relieved and cheer up. Uziel also smiles looking at Azel, but she ignores him and turns her face away. She explains the assignment, which is to make D-Vitality Potion, which won't be hard to make if they combine their knowledge, but they need to gather ingredients for it as well. She asks on who could gather the tail of the fire lizard, and Uziel agrees to get it. She tells him that the monster corpse is the most important part, hope he knows that, and to only select something fresh, to which he replies, he does. Since Uziel looks confident, Azel decides to leave it up to him. And Uziel smirks, thinking that he will dropship the fire lizard here. Now we switch scenes and Professor Maizen is meeting a student whom she called. She hands him over a note and tells him to give this to the C Group first-year alchemy students. Other than Team 12, that is. As the student agrees, she gives off a confident smirk. Since the alchemy practical exam is done in front of the Alchemy Castle's official alchemist, if he shows his pathetic sight in front of them, his career in alchemy would be over. As she states that she will teach Uziel on what happens when a student goes against a professor. Now at the S-Class training hall, someone calls out to Flame. The student hands her over the note, which Professor Maizen gave him, which is the alchemy announcement, and informs her to not tell other students, and Professor said that she would understand what she meant by that. And Flame understands she means Team 12 with Beck Uziel. She thinks to do something about it, not listening to the professor. But she suddenly thinks of something. If Uziel knows the novel, he will be prepared for the incident. And he will prepare not the tail of a fire lizard, but italic spider scales needed for the Terran Point potion. As this will be her perfect chance to test Uziel. Now fast forward and we see Uziel is using a barrier to move to Derivel Stadium and getting all dizzy due to it. And there, a lady greets him by welcoming him to Derivel. He informs her that he is not an official mage, just a cadet, and she replies, even a cadet of Stellar Academy is worth of the same treatment as an official mage. As everyone around him are also watching in surprise and being jealous of him, since they have never even seen its uniform. She asks if he needs any help, he could let her know, and Uziel leaves thanking her. Uziel notes that as long as he have a pass and a stellar pocket watch, he would get treated as an official mage, no matter where he goes, which is sure nice, and he can even use Warp Gate, which costs 100,000 credits for free. Thanks to which, he has been going around the city every week and has confirmed that the information he has is mostly the same. Now he tries to search for his monsters for the ingredients. The fire lizard, which is known to have a risk of level 2, although its stamina and power are stronger than most beasts, you have to use at least rank 2nd magic to catch one due to its magic resistance and quick movements. And he was testing it out by catching risk level 1 monsters, and they were quite easy, and such he thinks that he could handle a level 2 risk monster as well. Suddenly he hears a sound from behind him, and notes that the monster is here, and prepares his sword. He is standing ready, and the monster is also watching him. It suddenly attacks Uziel from behind, and he uses his sixth sense to detect him, and turns back and stabs the monster right through. And with that he finally gets one, but he hears another sound, as many more starts to come out from the bushes. Though Uziel smiles in confidence and gets ready, he rushes towards them, while stating that it's time to collect some ingredients. Fast forward and we see Azel is quite surprised seeing the ingredient being super fresh, as she praises him for having an eye for ingredients. She states that the only thing they have to do now is to make it perfectly, as Professor Maizen asks if everyone is ready, and explains that today's exam will be carried out in front of the alchemist from Alchemy Castle, and if they do well, it would be helpful for their career as an alchemist. She tells them to begin, and the subject will be the Terran Point Potion Type B, which surprises Uziel and his team, as Professor asks if they got the ingredients ready for it. Azel speaks up that they thought the exam was on the D Vitality Potion. Professor Maizen replies that she did send out an announcement that it was changed to Terran Point Potion, as she tries to verify it by asking the other students who are left speechless due to her fear. Uziel wonders if this is how she is going to play it. For him it does not matter, but it will be tough if the others also fail because of him in this exam. He wonders if it's the part of original novel, while Flame is looking back at him. And when he notices her, she quickly looks in front again. And Flame wonders just what happened, and didn't he knew about the novel, then why is he unable to prevent this from happening? Professor Maizen asks Azel if they prepared the wrong ingredients, and Azel is unable to speak up, hence Professor Maizen mocks them for forgetting the goal of an alchemist, and mix up the ingredients. She gets an evil grin and is about to disqualify their team, but suddenly someone tells her to wait. And it's Uziel, who asks if they just have to make a Terran Point Potion, which confuses Professor Maizen. And he states that they will make it, and one with higher efficacy than hers, using different ingredients than her as well, which surprises Professor Maizen, something which he has always done. The alchemist from the tower starts to whisper among themselves and Professor Maizen chuckles. She thinks the core ingredient for the Terran Point Potion is the italic spider scales. The italic spider scales have vast amount of nutrients, and the Terran Point Potion is the thermal supplement created with that as the foundation. But he is going to make a thermal supplement using the tail of fire lizard. This is even better for me. She gives them the green light and the time limit of 1 hour to make it. His team asks him if he is crazy and that it wouldn't work like this. He replies that there is no choice but to try since it has come to this, and tells them to trust him since it's better to try something than to get disqualified like this. And hearing that, they all cheer up and gets ready to try making it. Uziel smiles and starts to explain them the process. Alchemy was one of Uziel's main interest when he was playing the game, and he has recorded each and every recipe, and of course among them was a recipe for Terran Point Potion Type B. At first, he didn't plan to do this recipe since it was going to be a recipe that Professor Maizen invented in the future. Uziel starts explaining the reason the italic spider scales have a lot of nutrients is so that it can hatch eggs, and it has a similar feature as the tail of a fire lizard, this blood vessel. The Aleka tribe in the southern desert is said to use this blood vessels to improve the health of their leaders. Using it also results in a longer life expectancy, so they can use this instead. Liwan tells them he have some knowledge about this, so he can take this process on. Uziel continues, this spike mulberry mistletoe should be dehydrated using the desert style of mana release, and asks if anyone knows how to do that, and Sahun replies, he has learned about it with his dad before, so he would be able to do it in 5 minutes. And another part of the process, Azel raises her hand to take care of it, and hence they all start to make the potion. Looking at them, Uziel thinks that they all are better than he expected. Fast forward and Professor Maizen is surprised to see the potion actually being completed, as Uziel introduces it as the Terran Point Potion Type B. The alchemist behind them are unable to believe that children could do that. Professor Maizen starts to get nervous about it, since it's a potion she spent countless years inventing, and does not believe that they could actually complete it so easily. The alchemist comes forward to check it. As he starts to examine it, he is quite shocked. The other alchemist asks his thoughts, and he replies, though it's incomplete, and there were a bit too many ingredients added. This potion is much more effective than Professor Maizen's. The alchemists are really impressed, and compliments them for possessing such unique knowledge. While Professor Maizen is pissed, she snatches it from their hand to check it herself, and is surprised as well, and notes her technique that uses a monster's nutrients to replace a human's vitality has definitely been applied here. and that this is clearly a perfect potion, though she is still in denial and wonders how could they create a result better than her potion right on the spot. But she realizes that she is the one who would give grades in the end, and can just disqualify them for missing ingredients. Just as she is about to disqualify them, the alchemist speaks up that even an A+ score wouldn't be enough for Team 12, and asks Professor Mason's opinion. And we see her completely pissed at the alchemists as well, and hence is forced to pass their team. And they all get cheered up and excited about it. While they are leaving, Professor Maisen is beaming with a dark aura, as she warns Uziel to just wait for her. Now we switch scene to S-Class Training Center, where Flame has finally finished up his training. Suddenly he overhears Ars Huang and her friends consoling her and cheering her that she is doing better than the princess. Flame notices her as well as the genius fire class mage whom she heard about. They talk about beyond scary growth speed, and that even though she practices for years, princess already, and that soon she will surpass her in control as well, which shocks Flame, since Beyond's control should start to develop in the second year only. She wonders if this is also due to Beck Uziel. Flame notes that the practical exam was strange as well, since the Tyron Point Potion Type B was a recipe that future Azel was supposed to find, which Professor Maisen would steal and complete. She questions on how is that Uziel knows the recipe that didn't even appear in the original novel, but it seems that he didn't knew about the incident that was going to happen. Suddenly she realizes something, as he knows about the future but does not know the original novel. She assumes that perhaps he is not a possessor but a regressor? It would make sense if he was someone who came from the future. He may know things about the future, but not the small incidents that occurred to Azel. And in the original novel, Ma Yuzeong did once obtain the opportunity to regress. The sole being with the power of time in this world, the 11th moon of the Silver Age, with that being's power. Suddenly someone comes along and asks Flame on what's wrong? And we see it's Ha Wan Riang. Considering it a good timing, Flame asks him about Uziel and what does he think about him, and he replies that all he thinks is that he is a strange student. Flame asks if he does not feel anything else, to which he replies, not particularly. She gets frustrated and Wan Riang asks if she is bothered by Uziel. She replies that she does. And Wan Riang hesitantly replies, I see, and Flame thinks it's due to that it seems he also knows about the original novel just like she does. And Flame suddenly says, but this won't do, confusing Wan Riang, and Flame adds, whining like this does not match her personality. She tells Wan Riang that she is going to confide her thoughts to Beck Uziel, hearing which surprises Wan Riang for some reason.